which is
This
presently.
year's International Women's Day is a time to reflect on climate change and its impact, especially on women and girls. To review the progress made so far to mitigate climate change in Nigeria, to celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness against bias, take action for equality, and a call for action. The agenda for today's summit. The impact of climate on women and how we can engage women in mitigating climate change to build a sustainable future. What can the government, civil society organizations, and development partners do to advance women's inclusion in addressing climate action? Gender inequalities. How can we advance gender equality in the context of climate crisis and disaster risk reduction, as women are the most vulnerable and marginalized? And also we'll be spotlighting women's contributions to achieving climate justice in Nigeria. Please let us take a look at this short video clip.
What is on the kind of
climate change. As world leaders continue talks in Glasgow to address climate change and cut carbon emissions globally, an environmentalist says it's high time Nigeria prioritize the environment. Here's his story.
It's actually very what is on the kind of arguments we're getting from African politicians, insisting on keeping on the pathways of utilizing fossil fuels in their development efforts because the global north use that pathway, therefore we must use that pathway. This argument sounds interesting, but actually we all know the consequences of following that pathway. I think we should speak about something else. The problem we have, I believe, is the kind of production architecture in the oil sector in Nigeria, where government and the oil companies are in joint venture, so they both are looking for the pathways of resistance. But if they can externalize the cost on the poor people and the environment, they feel happy to do that. You don't have to say because we are not contributing much, therefore this is our chance to have the planet. It doesn't really work that way. That's the challenge.
Thank you very much. Introduction. This summit is being hosted by the African Girls Empowerment Network, a registered young feminine frontline civil society organization dedicated to reducing gender inequality by empowering and advancing the human rights of young women and girls. We advance gender equality in girls' education, promote women's good health, bolster women's role in leadership and economic inclusion. African Girls Empowerment This summit is convened in commemoration of the International Women's Day, a call to recognize the contribution of women and girls around the world who are leading the charge in climate change, adaptation, mitigation, and response to build a more sustainable future for all. In Nigeria and other communities around the world, the impact of climate change are being felt, and urgent adaptation to these changes need to be prioritized. Our main focus area in the African Girls Empowerment Network is advancing gender equality in girls' education, which is the STEM Girls Initiative. We advance young women and girls' good health and well-being, which is the Age Cares Initiative. We also young women and girls' leadership, inclusion, policy advocacy, and political inclusion, which is the Moment for Women Alliance. Also advancing young women and girls' bodily rights and autonomy, that is the Belle by Choice initiative. We also advance young women and girls' economic and financial inclusion, which is the VET for women. We have 5 major initiatives. The STEM Girls Initiative is a program that empowers and advances gender equality in girls' education, particularly in the field of STEM. The Moment for Women focuses on women and girls' rights and leadership inclusion in order to amplify the voices of young women and girls. Fight for Women initiative focuses on women financial and economic inclusion to improve the life of our target population. We have the Belle by Choice initiative. It's a program that focuses on advancing young women and adolescent girls' sexual and reproductive health and rights to end unsafe abortion and unintended pregnancy through the use of modern contraceptives. Finally, the AGE network provides emergency relief and timely support, such as healthcare, educational support, water, sanitation, and hygiene emergency shelter, nutritional food items, and clothing for women in vulnerable and displaced settings. The 5 major initiatives were developed based on the needs. They were developed based on the needs to advance gender equality in girls' education and promote young women's sexual and reproductive health and rights in the role of leadership and economic inclusion, and to strengthen the capacity of young women and girls-led groups. We have 4 priority sustainable development goals, which is quality education, SDG 4, advancing gender equality in girls' education, where the STEM Girls Initiative falls, the gender equality, which is SDG 5, we advance young women and girls' leadership inclusion, policy advocacy, and political inclusion, where the Moment for Women initiative falls. And finally, and also the VET for Women initiative falls under the gender equality. SDG 3, which is the good health and well-being, advancing young women and girls' good health and well-being, where the Age Cares Initiative falls. Also advancing young women and girls' bodily rights and autonomy, which is the Belle by Choice. And finally, the SDG 13, which is the climate action, advancing young women and girls' inclusion in building climate resilience in the communities. Our mission Our core mission is to empower, support, and protect young women and girls in advancing their bodily rights, leadership, and economic inclusion, and to foster them to become inextricable partners in the sustainable development of their society for our generation, and most importantly, the generation next. Our vision is to become Africa's #1 movement for gender equality, young women and girls capacity development, leadership and economic empowerment hub, and platform through which women become inextricable partners for sustainable development. Please meet our speakers. And the first person, Mrs. Aderonke Obafaye. Mrs. Aderonke Obafaye is a scientist with the Center for Atmospheric Research in the National Space Research and Development Agency, a parastatal of the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, Nigeria. She has published some research work in reputable journals and has attended many conferences and workshops, both within and outside the country. She's a member of some professional bodies and currently serves as the program officer of African Geophysical Society. She has a strong passion to see more enrollment of women in STEM. We thank you very much, Ms. Aderonke, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Dr. Nchom, Dr. Joyce I Nchom. She's a meteorologist, a proficient weather presenter who works with the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, since 2008 to date. She's a climate change expert, mentored at the Oxford School of Climate Change, United Kingdom. A climate reality leader trained in Climate Reality Leadership Core. She has an advanced professional postgraduate diploma in organizational development and transformation, a bachelor's degree in geography, master's in meteorology, and a PhD in applied meteorology. Bias towards biometeorology and climate change related themes, with ingenious publications to her credit. We thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Joyce I Nchom.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Our third speaker is Dr. Sardar Tobaba. She has the Environment Unit at the Center of Energy and Environmental Strategy Research, Kaduna State University, and she lectures at the Department of Geography. She holds a PhD in Environmental Change from the University of Birmingham and an MSc in Environmental Technology at the Montfort University, Leicester, and a BTech in Industrial Chemistry from ATBU, Bauchi. Her research lies at the intersection of environment and development, with a particular focus on the integration of Sustainable Development Goals. We thank you very much, Dr. Sardar Tobaba, for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Our panelist, Ms. Temi Udo Afia, works at GIZ Global Energy Transformation Program as a technical advisor on renewable energy regulation and market development. She is also a certified expert in climate finance and renewable energy. She volunteers with the Women in Renewable Energy International Committee to support the mission of advancing the role of women in the energy sector. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you very much for having me.
And finally, we have Dr. Essio Boo Nemeca. He is a partnership strategist, a young people mobilizer, and a PhD scholar with a specialization in production and environmental economics. For over 7 years, he has continued to be involved in climate change events, seminars, conferences, and workshops. He's well at home with climate change adaptation, greenhouse gas reduction, mitigation, and resilience. This reflects well on his current evidence-based research and endeavors and engagement in rural dwellers. We thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Essio Boo.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, I hope you can get me.
Yes, we can hear you very clearly, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. On this note, we'll be going to, what is climate change? What is climate change to a layman, an average Nigerian?
Okay. You are directing the question to me?
No, sir.
Okay. All right.
Before I begin, I would like to introduce myself. I am Agbarakwe Esther, the Health Program Officer at African Girls Empowerment Network. Thank you very much for joining us today on this International Women's Day Virtual Summit. Moving on, what is climate change? According to the United Nations, climate change can simply refer to long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, such as variations in solar cycle. Kindly mute your microphone, please. However, how can we define climate change to an average Nigerian layman? It can be unprecedented. It can be unprecedented change in the weather patterns, such as prolonged rainfall or desert encroachments. What are the causes of climate change? There is an overwhelming scientific consensus that global warming is mostly man-made. For example, burning of fossil fuel and gas, as well as oil, has increased the concentration of greenhouse gas, such as carbon dioxide, in our atmosphere. Agricultural activities have also contributed to climate change. Scientists are certain that the link between greenhouse gases and global warming is like the link between smoking and lung cancer. Deforestation has actually contributed about 20% to the amount of carbon, to the emission of carbon dioxide in the environment. Carbon stored in trees are released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, and they contribute as much as 20% to climate change. What are the impacts of climate change? The climate change impacts the 4 pillars of sustainability, which are the social, the human and cultural, economic, and environmental. Climate change has a great effect on these 4 pillars, from the exacerbation of poverty to health risks and to the breakdown of infrastructure, and also the loss of environmental, political, economic, and social security that impacts. The impact of climate change is quite extensive. Climate change has led to the destruction of shelters, arable land, access roads, and economic trees, such as as a result of disasters like landslides and tornadoes. Climate change is also responsible for excessive heat, the heightened insect activity, and also the drying up of streams. However, a critical aspect is missing during the discussion on climate change, especially during the roundtable, which is the gender perspective. Now let's talk about climate change and gender. Women have contributed greatly to deforestation in their search for firewood, which has led to the disappearance of many plant and animal species. Women and girls, however, are disproportionately affected by climate change, reflecting the fact that they are most likely in many countries to be marginalized and disadvantaged. For example, a woman who earns between $20 and $40 per month on an average still has to perform other roles like childbearing, taking care of the household, educating the children, growing food, and cooking, washing, cleaning, and providing, and sometimes providing for their families. Indeed, low income coupled with prevalent gender inequalities exacerbates women's vulnerability to the impact of climate change. The social impact of climate change, such as male migration, also increases the workload of women predisposing them to physical abuse as well as sexual abuse in their search for depleting commodities. And also this encourages child marriage. Climate change mitigation. The good news is that the impact of climate change can be controlled or reduced. And this brings us to climate change mitigation, which consists of actions to limit global warming and its related effects. This involves reduction of human emissions of greenhouse gases, as well as the activities that reduces the concentration in the atmosphere. It is one of the many ways to respond to climate change. This summit is a call for citizens and governments to be involved in mitigating climate impact. We have to voice out, we have to give voices to the voiceless, because even if we are not experiencing it directly, someday we'll eventually experience the impact of climate change. Over the years, women in different states have developed indigenous adaptive measures for mitigating climate change. However, policy making to combat this climate change is desperately needed. As this regard, Nigeria is clearly unprepared for environmental disaster which accompany climate change, which also brings the need for this policy making. So policymakers need to address climate change in the way that in such a way that is gender responsive. Should women be involved in climate change mitigation? The answer is yes. Why should women be involved in climate change mitigation? 100% of the total population needs to be involved, with a percentage of 49.3%, which is close to half of the population. It is critical that the needs, perspectives, and ideas of women, as well as men, are included in climate action, so as to create just, effective, and sustainable solutions. Furthermore, indigenous women have experienced climate change for generations and have been forerunners and leaders in environmental conservation. Their knowledge and expertise contributes greatly to building resilience to climate impacts and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. These traditional skills that these women have relating to natural resource management in areas such as innovation, waste, and energy are effective tools in climate strategy. Secondly, empowering women means more climate solutions. When women have access to resources as men, women can increase their agricultural yields by 20 to 30%. Of the total agricultural output by 2 to 4%, but also contributing to reduction of hunger. This can positively impact climate adaptation. Women are vital to building climate resilience in the community. According to the United Nations, women tend to share information about community well-being that is important for resilience and are more willing to adapt to environmental changes since their family lives are impacted. Additionally, women are usually the first responders to community responses to natural disasters. They are leaders in disaster risk reduction, and they contribute to post-recovery by addressing the early recovery needs of their community and families, and they strengthen community building. Climate change impacts on everyone, but not equally. Women commonly face higher risk and greater burden from the impact of climate change in situations of poverty due to existing roles, responsibilities, and cultural norms. Targeted investment in gender equality and women empowerment, yields returns in environmental conservation, poverty alleviation, and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And finally, all countries have agreed. The work in progress under the UNFCCC, countries have recognized the importance of women and men equally in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change processes and in the development of implementation of national climate policies that are gender responsive by establishing a dedicated agenda under the convention addressing issues of gender and climate change. Let's welcome our first speaker, Dr. Sardar Tobaba, as he speaks on climate change in Nigeria, what the causes are, the impacts, and adaptive measures to mitigate climate change impacts. Dr. Saadatu. Dr. Saadatu. I think Dr. Saadatu is not with us at the moment.
But she's in the room. I can see her name. Maybe her mic is muted.
Okay. It seems Dr. Saadatu is currently unavailable. On this note, I'd like to call our second speaker, Dr. Imara Joyce Nchom. She would be speaking on climate change awareness and action plan to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in Nigeria. Dr. Nchom.
Hi, good morning. Or good afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon already. Good afternoon, everyone. And happy International Women's Day to every woman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
You can all hear me. Okay, thank you. So are you going to project? Are you going to share your screen?
Okay, we'll do that now.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, like I said, happy International Women's Day to every woman and to every man supporting us. We say thank you. I can see some men here online. We are very grateful for the support. And to every woman, I want you to know that you are strong. You have strength. The things you do, when men find themselves doing such, they would likely break down. You know, God has blessed us with the ability to multitask. Yes or yes? All right. So the topic of discussion for today is climate change awareness and action plan to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Goals in Nigeria. Before we go further, it will be good to define what some of these terminologies mean. So we're talking about climate change. So what is climate change? Climate change would be referred as a long-term shift in temperatures and weather patterns. Once upon a time, temperatures were not this high over certain parts of the country, but now you find temperatures, particularly over Nigeria, as high as 46 degrees Celsius. Once upon a time, flooding was not, dominant in some parts of the country, where you find incessant cases of flooding over parts of Nigeria. So long-term shift in temperatures and weather pattern. And then what could be attributed to this? Human activity, man, what we do, what you and I do, our activities, such as burning of fossil fuels like coal, and then oil and gas. And this produces gases, that trap this heat, the process known as global warming. So basically, that's what we could say climate change is. And then we talk about awareness. Since we are talking of climate change awareness, when we talk about awareness, what do we mean? Awareness campaign, you could basically say that it is that's a sustained effort that people engage in so as to educate people, or to boost public awareness about a particular cause or about what an organization stands for. So if I go out on the streets or take to social media to educate people and boost or increase awareness regarding a particular cause, that is an awareness campaign. And then I would also want to talk about the knowledge of climate change in Nigeria. How well do people know what climate change is? Like in 2019, Ray and Publis, they are authors who opined that about 52% of Nigerians have little knowledge of climate change. However, recently, in a survey carried out by myself, Joyce I, amongst urban professionals, I got to know that about 95% of urban professionals are aware of climate change. And for us, that is a plus, because once these urban professionals are aware of climate change, it will be easy to step it down to people at the grassroots. Then why is this climate change awareness very important? It is important because when you know what climate change is, when I know what climate change is, when the person at the grassroots know what climate change is, it helps us, brace up and put up mitigative and adaptive strategies. Okay, if I know that climate change is a shift in a weather pattern over a long period of time, then we put up measures on how to adapt to these changes or how to mitigate these changes. So that is what climate change awareness does, and that is why it is important. And so we go on to the next slide, which talks about how do you create this awareness? Yes, from the research carried out by others, you know that there are percentages of people who are yet to be aware of climate change. So how do we create awareness about climate change to these people? We talk of advocacy programs where people set out on the streets or on the social media to create and talk about global solutions on climate change problems. And also you start discussions by talking to people. You ask people, have you heard about climate change? Their response will give you the next step to take. And then you could take to your social media handles to share information. It's not something we should leave to the government alone. You and I, you, the woman, who are the vulnerable population, we could take to the streets, we could take to our social media handles and talk to people about climate change its impact and the effect on humans. And then you could carry out a research. If you are a researcher, you could carry out a research, and when you do that, that could also create awareness amongst people on climate change. And then that takes me to the next. That takes me to the next slide, where we say, okay, so climate change is already having an impact on Nigeria, where we have cases of increased temperatures and extreme heat, flooding, and what have you. So when you create awareness on climate change, it could help in achieving sustainability in developing countries, of which Nigeria is a part of. And when you raise awareness on climate change, there could be understanding on the effects of this climate change on you, on myself, on someone out there on the streets. When you let the person know that, hey, when temperatures are high, there is a likelihood of the person being affected or being infected by meningitis, you have heat stress, and what have you, that would make the person brace up and know the necessary steps to take. And so we talked about action on sustainable development goals. What are sustainable development goals? When we talk about this, the sustainable development goals, they are a collection of 17 goals which are interlinked, and these are global goals that are designed to be a footprint towards achieving a better and sustainable future for everyone. You remember the Millennium Development Goals? So the Sustainable Development Goal is like a step up on the Millennium Development Goals. So it's like a blueprint, like I earlier mentioned, that is meant to be followed for a better, sustainable future for everyone. And the SDGs were set up in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly, and it's intended to be achieved by the year 2030. So what are these development goals that we are talking about? Like I mentioned earlier, there are about 17 of them, where the first goal is no poverty, where it talks about economic growth, which would be inclusive to provide sustainable jobs for everyone. We talk about zero hunger for goal 2, where it talks about food security, the agricultural sector, to provide key solutions for development. And we talk about good health. The Sustainable Development Goals is also looking at the well-being of everyone, where it looks at ensuring healthy lives for everyone, promoting healthy lives. Like it is said, health is wealth. When we are not healthy, when the woman is not healthy, you know that the entire family will sure not be well. I don't know if it happens to you, but I am a woman. Once I fall sick, or once I show sign of possible sickness, everybody in the house appears to be sick. That is the power of a woman. And gladly, the Sustainable Development Goal looks at good health and well-being for all, as well as quality education, which is goal 4, where it looks at obtaining a quality education for everyone, which is a foundation towards improving a woman's life. You know, when a woman is educated, it's as good as educating the entire community. Gladly, the Sustainable Development Goals looks at quality education, and then it looks also at gender equality. I know my women are very happy when we talk of gender equality. Yeah, yes, break the bias. Looks at gender equality, where the woman also has the right to exercise her fundamental human right. And once that is achieved, we know that we are in for a peaceful and sustainable world. Hey, when a woman is happy, she can go all the way out for everyone. Gladly, the Sustainable Development Goals looks at that as well. And then clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth. And goal 9, we talk about the industry, innovation, and infrastructure, which is crucial to achieving a sustainable development. Then reduce inequality. We talk about reduced inequality, which is the goal 10. It talks about policies that should be universal in principle, not policies that would favor a particular group of people and places the other sex at disadvantage. No, reduce inequality where everyone has the advantage and no one is marginalized. Then goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. And then goes further to goal 12, which talks about responsible consumption and production. Then life below water, which seeks to look at careful management of this global source, and that is water. You hear them say water is life. Now, talking about water, the woman at the end of the day, finds herself at the receiving end. When there is no water in the rural area, you find the woman carrying heavy bowls, looking for water. So at the end of the day, the woman tends to be affected. Gladly, the SDG seeks to address this issue. And life on land, goal 16 talks about peace and justice, which are strong institutions, and goal 17 of the SDG, partnership to achieve the goal. One person cannot do the job, the more the merrier. When many people join hands together and partner together globally, then the world is in for sustainable development. So talking about action plans on the SDG, what are action plans? An action plan is like a checklist, where an organization has a checklist that it looks at step by step, of the task they need to complete. So you have what you want to do, and then you spell it all out. And then a checklist, okay, has this been done? Has this been achieved? This would enable an organization to achieve the goals they have set. And when an organization has an action plan, or you have an action plan, it gives you a clear direction. It gives you a clear direction on where you are headed. Are you on the right path, or you have deviated from those goals you have set? And it also helps track this progress achieved so far. So how do you follow up on action plans? Now, talking about the SDGs, the goals have to be defined. Then you list down the steps you want to follow, you prioritize, and then you set milestones. Like the SDG says, by 2030, all these goals, 17 goals we have mentioned, should have been achieved. So they check by 2020, have these goals been achieved? How many of these goals have been achieved? What else needs to be done? So that is what we mean when we talk about setting milestones. Now, to achieve the SDGs, the United Nations has implemented about 227 key activities across Nigeria. Now, let's not forget that our focus is Nigeria, but before we come down to Nigeria, we have to look at it at a global scale. So for the SDGs to be achieved, the UN said it's implementing about 227 key activities across Nigeria through established agencies. It has established agencies through which these activities, through which these goals are expected to be achieved, and they serve as a conduit through which indigenous government agencies and non-governmental organizations collaborate for the realization of this plan. And remember the 17th goal talks about collaboration and partnership. So these agencies seek to cater for each of the SDGs. We have 17 of them, and then the United Nations have established agencies through which these will be achieved. So each of these agencies also have their action plans. And then that takes us to the next slide, where you have United Nations agencies in Nigeria. You have the Food and Agricultural Agency. You have IFAD, which is a fund for agricultural development. You have UN Women. You have the UNAIDS for United Nations program on HIV/AIDS. You have the population funds. You have the children funds, that's UNICEF. You have the World Food Program. You have World Health Organization and the World Meteorological Organization as well. So these are United Nations agencies in Nigeria, and through which the SDGs are meant to be met. That is to say that there are action plans by each of these aforementioned agencies to bring about the realization of the 17 goals that have been mentioned earlier. So I want to bring it down home. We might not be able to look at this. Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Oh, okay, sorry, a call came in and I was interrupted. That's why, sorry about that. So like I said, we might not be able to look at all these agencies as to their individual action plans towards the realization of the SDG. But hey, I'm not being biased here, but let me bring it back home and talk about one of the agencies, and that is the World Meteorological Organization. Remember I mentioned earlier that the United Nations have their agencies stationed in Nigeria, and then we also have indigenous agencies that work with this. So like for the World Meteorological Organization, you have the Nigerian Meteorological Organization, and this seeks to look at the climate action plan, that is goal 13, which talks about climate change being a global challenge that affects everyone. Climate change affects everyone, and we know the vulnerable group are women and children. When there is drought, the woman suffers. When there is drought, the woman leaves her house. The woman goes to the stream to look for water, and with that tiredness, she comes back to take care of the family. When there is flooding, this same woman will be the one to clean the house. This same woman will be the one to arrange the house and put everything in order. This is what the woman does. We know that women are the vulnerable group. And so the climate action, which WMO and the Nigerian Meteorological Agency seek to address, the WMO provides world leadership and expertise in international cooperation in the delivery and use of high quality, authoritative weather, climate, hydrological, and related environmental services by its members for the improvement of well-being of societies and nations. And that is done through the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. And in order to be practical and to bring this, provide the services, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency is obligated to provide adequate weather information and climate information as well to various socioeconomic sectors of Nigeria. So the Nigerian Meteorological Agency just had its public presentation on the seasonal climate prediction, where farmers are told when to expect the onset of the rains and the cessation of the rains. And this particular document also contains vigilance threshold for diseases such as meningitis, malaria, and what have you, that if the average woman would cash in on this, it go a long way in helping her adapt to these changes. She might not be able to stop it because climate is dynamic, it changes, can adapt to it. If there is flooding, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, through this weather and climate information, would help the farmer know how to cash in on this flood, maybe divert it to rice farming. You find around Taraba, okay, yeah, I think was it last year? Okay, there was kind of not enough rainfall. There was no flooding. People were happy there was no flooding, but rice farmers were not happy. That is because they have been taught how to adapt to these changes. So this is what the Sustainable Development Goals are all about, and the action plans by these agencies towards adaptation and mitigation. So whatever the Meteorological Agency does is in line with the fulfillment of the vision of the World Meteorological Agency and also achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, this is not just for the Nigerian Meteorological Agency or the World Meteorological Agency. All these other agencies have their own action plans, from environment to health, the World Health Organization, and what have you. And so with this, I would say thank you for listening, because Nigeria is really and actually working towards the actualization of these Sustainable Development Goals through set action plans by individual agencies. And what I just did was to just pick one of these agencies of the United Nations, that's the World Meteorological Organization, and the home body, which is Nigerian Meteorological Agency. What it does, not only agriculture or food security, it serves the health sector as well. It also serves environment. It also serves the transport sector. It also serves the risk and disaster and risk reduction. So that is to say that Nigeria is working, and I know that things will sure get better. Woman out there, cash in on this information. This information are out there for you and I to use. I pray that you will know the right sources and where to source them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nchom, for that excellent presentation. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Dr. Nchom has highlighted the importance of climate change awareness, and not just among women and children in the room, but also among men. She has highlighted the importance and how to create awareness on climate change and the various sustainable development goals. And she also drove it home by showing us how to follow up on action plan, as well as the United Nations agencies in Nigeria and their various impacts on climate change. And also, more importantly, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency and what they have been doing to mitigate climate change in Nigeria. Thank you very much once again, ma'am.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Dr. Saadatu, I don't know if she's back on the call. Dr. Saadatu. Well, on this note, I would like to call on our next speaker, Ms. Aderonke Obafaye.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. Please respond,
Hi.
please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Age Network, for inviting me to this very, very important conversation that we're having today on a very special day. I am very happy and delighted to be a part of this movement. I'll go straight to my presentation. Can I share my screen? I'll need permission from the host to share. I'd like to thank my colleagues for participating in this program with me. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, please, can we all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I've been asked to speak on climate justice. I've been asked to speak on climate justice and gender equality. And this is a very beautiful topic that I'm very passionate and interested in. So I welcome you to join me in this ride. My name is Adrian Kilbafi. I'm a scientific officer with the Center for Atmospheric Research under the National Space Research and Development Agency. I like to start this way, that climate change is fundamentally a human rights issue, and environmental justice, it's a human rights issue and environmental justice issue, and that it connects the local to the global. So like Dr. Joyce was saying earlier on, that yes, we are dealing with Nigeria, but we cannot isolate Nigeria in this conversation. It has to be global, because whatever affects us will definitely go around into affecting everyone that is, in existence. So without much ado, I would like to also quote a saying by our late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and he said, "Adaptation is becoming a euphemism for social injustice on a global scale." So while the citizens of the rich world are protected from harm, the poor, the vulnerable, and the hungry are exposed to the harsh reality of climate change in their everyday lives. Just put bluntly, the world's poor are being harmed every day through a problem that is not of their making. This is very, very, it's so sad. But what exactly is climate change? And why are we so interested in climate change? Climate change is not just a term. It's more than a term. And it's also more than a movement. It's a movement that acknowledges climate change. It acknowledges the harmful impact of climate change on our social and economical being. Okay, so it goes further to explain to us the impacts of climate change, even on the privileged people around us. So it's an agenda that seeks to redress global warming by reducing disparities in development and power that drives climate change and continued injustice. So advocates for climate justice are striving to have these inequalities addressed head-on through long-term mitigation and adaptation strategies. So climate scientists will always use the two very key words when we talk about climate change. One, mitigation, and two, adaptation. These are strategies that we need to engage when we're combating climate change. Now, what exactly is mitigation? What exactly is adaptation? Dr. Joyce tried to touch on mitigation and adaptation. And I would say also that mitigation is an action to reduce emissions that causes climate change. So it's more like you're trying to reduce what causes climate change. You're using clean energy. You're trying to look for sustainable transportation system. You're trying to look for more efficient energy usage. So recently, there is a partner with the Center for Atmospheric Research who is in Nigeria. And the sole reason they're in Nigeria is to see how they can also produce hydrogen, large amounts of hydrogen, just to complement other sources of renewable energy. So they're looking at ways to say, okay, what other ways can we use to, acquire or to generate energy beyond what we already have? And adaptation are the actions that are, carried out to manage the risk of climate change impact, meaning that, okay, we are faced with the realities. How do we adapt? So there's going to be increase in temperature. How do I adapt? There are different ways. I can decide to go for my cream, sunburn cream that would help me, not to have the effect of the sun directly on my skin. I could decide to cover up, of course, that would also generate much heat. That's just on a layman level. But, these are the two key areas or strategies by which you can fight climate change: mitigation and adaptation. Let's move on, please. And sorry, I like to always reference whatever image I'm using. This image was gotten from IWD2022.com, so you might be interested in checking out some of their contents. Now, why do we need climate justice? What is the key reason we need climate justice? I said here, because the negative impacts of climate change are unequally distributed around the world. So there is already an imbalance in the impacts that is being felt from the populace, from Nigeria to India, to Japan, to Australia, to Canada, to America. There is an injustice, an imbalance in the impacts that is of climate change, or how the impact of climate change is being felt, and hence the need for climate justice. So factors such as gender, age, disability, ethnicity, and poverty. These are factors that negatively impact those from low-income countries, and hence the need for climate justice. Here is a map showing the impact of climate change. So if you look closely at Africa, you would realize that the red color shows that the impact of climate change is so high, the temperature is so high in that region. And you would also agree with me that Africa falls, in the space where you have the low-income countries who are below the poverty level. So these are the people who feel the impact more of climate change. And lastly, I'd like to say this, that people in low-income communities and countries and developing countries who have lesser impact on the environment are often the ones most affected by the degradation we are seeing today. So you see why we need climate justice. We need to speak about this. We need to talk about this. And of course, you can equate environmental justice to climate justice, because from the environmental pollution and all, you get into climate justice. You begin to talk about ways by which you can equalize this effect on human beings. Now, I'd like to briefly talk about the Center for Atmospheric Research. That is my center where I work, and the activities we are doing. What are we doing? What research are we doing to also try to mitigate the impact of climate change on the environment? Now, the Center for Atmospheric Research is an activity center of the National Space Research and Development Agency, which is headed by Professor Babatunde Rabiu. The center is committed to research and capacity building in the atmosphere, in the atmospheric and related sciences. That's our logo. Now, I'm very proud to say that our center is actively involved in a project in collaboration with the Penn State University in the US. And this collaboration has led to the installation of over 16 clarity and purple air sensors across Nigeria in the last 1 year. It's a network for real-time observation and measurements of particulate matter, PM1, PM2.5, and PM10. This particulate matter, they're very important when we talk about global warming, when we talk about climate change, because they are pollutants, and you know what pollutants do to the atmosphere. Apart from the fact that it has adverse effects on our health, it also contributes to global warming. And it also allows for dust particles from the Sahara deserts to impact us. And this can also impact us negatively in the areas of health, in the areas of transportation, in the areas of food, in the area of irrigation and all of that. So this project is very, very important to us, and like I said, particulate matter pollution is an environmental health problem that affects people worldwide, both low, middle, and the high class. So it's very important. Now we want to ask ourselves, we have identified this problem. What is the way forward? We have said before that inequality of real-time PM measurements in Africa is also a problem, because from this slide, you can see from the right-hand panel, you can observe that we have very scanty PM measurements across Africa. We have so much in North America, we have so much in Asia, we have so much in Central Africa and Central America, but we do not have lots of PM measurements. And because these people have realized that it is very important, this PM measurements and PM forecasting, nowcasting and forecasting is very important. So if you're able to have enough data, you can be able to model and help the society to model what the environment is going to look like. So you have some predictive measures to say, okay, on so day, the weather is going to be very hazy. So if you have some flights to catch, it would be nice for you to postpone them, and things like that. So it just gives a preventive measures. So you're seeing danger ahead and you're able to, to cut it off. So way forward is develop in-country capacity. We have to develop in-country capacity. We have to be able to develop ourselves in every aspect, most especially in terms of research and in terms of education, in terms of training people, training and capacity. So we have to develop data science activities. I was just out of another webinar. I've actually been in and out of webinars since 9 a.m., still talking about, the International Women's Day in collaboration, with other societal networks. And the key focus of the program was data science activities. So they try to encourage women to go into data science profession, such that, in a way to help us solve our problems. Okay, so you have tools, you have the skill to be able to answer some questions, to be able to deliver on some requests that you have. And like I said, use of purple air, the clarity sensor, that's what I showed earlier on, the map that we have that consists of the clarity sensors and the purple air sensors across Nigeria. And we hope to do more as funding permits. So we have inclusion of chemical and aerosol models. So that's just a bit of what I think we can do to help us monitor the PM measurements across Nigeria and by extension, Africa. So moving on next, we go to the next agenda, and that is climate justice in Nigeria, the way forward. I had said earlier, and I would like to also put this forward and to say that we need to build on existing development agreements. Dr. Joyce, while she was making her presentation, talked about the action plans that the government is doing. But you see, beyond that, I think we also need to start to implement. We need to begin to monitor this report and turn them into implementation. It's not just to make action or to put actions down, and you have the gender action plan, but a lot of the content in that plan are yet to be implemented. So we need to build on them. We need to implement them some more and set up action to slow climate change. There are actions that I think that Dr. Saadatu would have spoken about, so I didn't need to expatiate more on that. And we should agree on a convergence in per capita emission, so that we have a fair share of emission. So like I said earlier, I said that the country who contribute more to the emission of greenhouse gases are least affected by the problems of climate change. So that's the point, that we need to agree on fair share of emissions. We need to also engage public in debate about the significance and the urgency of climate change. Dr. Joyce had touched on that earlier. We need to developing countries to set climate goals. Like I said earlier, it's not just to write out goals, but also to be able to implement them for the good of the country and to reduce exclusion in global decision making. And that will lead us all to gender equality. We need to reduce exclusion in global decision making. And we need to enhance climate technology development and transfer. We need to encourage more participation in STEM programs. We need to engage more young people to pursue career in science and technology, because it is in science and in technology that we can come up with solutions to our climate problems. And also climate finance. You will agree with me that no country can do much without funding. So we need funding. So you need to have, finance mapped out for climate, and not just having the finance, but also ensuring that the money goes to the right place. goes to the right people who actually need it. Provide climate training also to help become more engaged. You provide climate training to youths, to young people, to women, and that will help them also to become much more engaged. I put here in my writing, and I said, we need to also implement mitigation measures and promote low carbon, high growth economic development, and also strengthen adaptation towards a sustainable climate resilience development pathway. So I think with all of this, we'll be able to move on into the right path to ensure that climate justice is enacted in Nigeria. Let's move on to the next slide, gender equality. Gender equality. This is the goal 5 of the Sustainable Development Goal, and it's to achieve gender equality and to empower all women and girls. Gender equality is fundamental to human rights. So most times I like to say that gender equality equals human rights. I don't think I'm very wrong. I'm wrong to say that. And it's an inspiration that benefits all of society, including girls and women. So these are the rights. We're defending the rights and inclusion of girls and women and people living with disabilities by improving the quality, availability, and the use of gender data. Gender data, that's very crucial. To support the rights of girls and women to decide when and how to have many children. That's key. And to protect and strengthen this largest source of funding for global sexual and reproductive health and rights. Thank you, Mrs. Esther. She had highlighted all of this earlier in her presentation. And to develop global girl leaders and advocates. So this is very crucial. I feel very sad, to mention that just a few days back, the National Assembly rejected outrightly the gender bill. I mean, that's for me, that would have been a very strategic point to celebrate the International Women's Day for us as Nigerians. But it was dismissed. I pray that we would have another set of leaders who would want to look into it, and pass it on, because it's very crucial. Now, where is the synergy between climate justice and gender justice? I would say that climate justice equals gender justice. C'est fini. Because if you look at what Asa Regna, the Deputy Executive Director of UN Women, said, and I quote, gender equality must be at the center of the world's response to the climate crisis. Women and girls are already shifting the climate discourse and implementing critical climate solutions. We need governments and all stakeholders to invest in their initiatives, energy, and activism. Now, this is the SDG 5, and it states clearly more about 6 of the SDG, or 7, talks about women, about gender equality. So gender equality is not just sex. It's also about people who are disadvantaged. It's about people who are underprivileged. It's about having equality, equity. So I like to use the word equity in place of equality, okay? So it's about giving people equal representation. It's about giving people equal access, and just having a representation from every point of view. So you have a holistic approach to a particular matter. What are the barriers to many women contributing to climate change? We have restricted rights. When you are married, you are a Yoruba woman married to an Igbo man, well, maybe you cannot even claim your husband's state of origin at the time when you want to contest for a position in the political scene. Or you are married to a man and you cannot have rights to own land, to own properties. These are restricted rights that will not bring out what is in a woman. And it will lead to deficit because the nation will not be able to harness all the resources that a woman has. Lack of access to financial resources, lack of STEM education. A lot of women, some women have been denied the right to education. Sometimes when they even get married, the man says, no, you can't go to school no more. You can't go to school. If you go to school, who's going to take care of my children? If you go to school, who's going to take care of who's going to take care of me? So, all of these things have been highlighted so that we can tell women, we can tell young girls, you have a choice. You have a choice. So if women know that they have a choice, I'm sure it will help them to be able to choose wisely and to decide what they want and how they want to go about it. And also limited access to the forums where political decisions are made. This political scene is such that they discourage women. You hear, oh, we're having a meeting by 2 a.m. Which woman wants to leave her husband's house by 2 a.m. going for one political meeting? It's unheard of, So I think that these are the barriers to women contributing to climate change. Now, we have spoken so much about the problems. What are the way forward? I said here, increase and strengthen the role and impact of women and girls in both international and national climate decision making. Support women's leadership and decision-making in climate action. Increase analysis on the impact of climate change decisions on women, and to integrate violence prevention into climate change. We need to address long-standing discriminatory land tenure practices. And we also need to continue to use our voices and build alliances through social movement. This is key. This is very important. You cannot underestimate the powers of the NGOs. There is an NGO that is called Solar Sisters. It's an NGO, it's a collaboration between the US, the Nigerian, Tanzania, and one other country. And what are they doing? They're trying to empower women. They're trying to empower women in the energy sector. So women purchase these lights, these energy bulbs and all, and resell it, and then they make gains. In that way, they're also promoting energy. They're promoting green energy, clean energy. And also, they are reducing the impact of climate change in their own little way. We should also expand on implementation strategy for their National Gender and Climate Action Plan. There is a climate action plan. There's also the Gender Action Plan. We need implementation. Climate finance investments, which close gender gaps across different sectors. Give a woman some money and see how she turns it into billions. So women have been known to be good custodians, good managers of resources. And if you do that, you see the world would be a better place. Provide climate training to help people become more engaged, help women become more engaged. So lastly, I'd like to just speak on the activities of the Federal Ministry of Environment. The Federal Ministry of Environment has been working very hard, and I must say that I'm very impressed by the activities that they're currently engaged in. I went into their site, to look up their site yesterday, and I saw so many things in there. So one of the things that caught my attention was the gender integration into national climate actions. My God, that's a very strong action plan. Like gender integration into national climate actions. It's a way by which we're seeing more of women's participation in climate change or climate change matters. And so we also have the National Ozone Office. The National Ozone Office is also in collaboration with our office, and the Ozone Secretariat of UNEP runs the affairs of the Montreal Protocols. So the Montreal Protocol is a protocol that agrees on the reduction of the use of HCFCs. So I think that also is a very commendable action, the right way to go in climate fight. There are so many NGOs also. I like to, to mention just a few. Women Arise for Change Initiative, Nigerian Conservation Foundation, Tomorrow's in Our Hands, International Climate Change Development Initiative. And I know that from this forum, some of us will go back and sit down and think and consider the little that we can do in our own environment. As Dr. Joyce said, we keep speaking out, we keep talking, we keep shedding we keep putting spotlights on the achievements of women. And also one of the ways I think that we can also run and to encourage the participation of women, even in climate change and gender issues, is to spotlight the achievements of women and to popularize it, and to also set up funds, prizes that you give to people who are involved in climate action, or in climate matters. I think that with all of this and many more that we will be listening to in the panel session, I think that we're on the right path to a greener future. Thank you very much for listening, and happy International Women's Day once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aderonke, for that excellent presentation. We really appreciate you. Ms. Aderonke has highlighted the importance of climate justice and gender equality in Nigeria, the importance of PM measures, the need to develop in-country capacity, to develop data science activities, the importance of climate justice in Nigeria, and the way forward. She has also highlighted the barriers of women that women might encounter and also the way forward. We really appreciate you very much, ma'am. And I think there's a question for you in the chat box. The question says, do you think Nigeria is ripe enough for such strategies? For example, how would our economy sustain strategies like education, eradication of fossil fuel vehicles, etc.?
Well, like I said, like I highlighted in the presentation, you cannot do much without funding. So you need funding for all of this. So I think that the federal government of Nigeria, under the Ministry of Environment, would have to vote more money into the drive for a cleaner environment. And so we have to start, of course, we start to talk, and then we start to put down the action plans, and then we start to implement. So I think that for every plan, there should be a timeline. So recently, some people started saying that they've seen some electrical cars in Lagos. That's the way it starts. GSM came into Nigeria. We weren't prepared for it. It came, and today, everybody, practically every home has a GSM for you. So I think that it's one step after the other. What I just would like to know, or to encourage our government, is to be transparent and to be sincere in the drive for this. It's something, it's achievable. There's nothing that we cannot do. So I think that we just follow suit and look out for countries who are also in that particular line, and then follow suit. I think it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate you. Please, if you have any more questions, if any participant has any more questions, kindly put it in the chat box. Thank you very much, Ms. Aderonke, for your excellent presentation. Dr. Imara, are you still on the call, ma'am?
Yes, I'm with you.
Yes, ma'am. You have a question in the chat box.
Okay.
It says, how do you present this concept to an average Nigerian who hasn't enough to eat? He said you spoke on climate change mitigation.
Concept of what? Okay.
Yes, concept of climate change mitigation.
Yeah, so it's very dicey, yeah, because like Aderonke mentioned, when you talk about mitigation, is what you do, to reduce the emission of these gases. So if I tell the average woman, stop using firewood, I should have an alternative for her, right? If I tell the average woman, okay, switch off your light bulbs when not in use, how often does she see light? Most of them live in darkness. So the issue of mitigation, if you ask me, I would just rather stick to adaptive measures to that woman who hardly finds what to eat. Okay, this is where you found yourself. I would rather tell her things to do to cope with her present situation. Because if I tell her to plant trees, she hasn't even had enough water to cook her food. So where would she get water during dry season to water that plant when I tell her to plant 2 trees when she cuts one for firewood? So when you ask me, the issue of mitigation transcends the average woman in the village. The issue of mitigation transcends that person who hardly finds what to eat. It lies more on the government implementing these action plans, like Aderonke mentioned earlier. So I would rather tell her ways to coping mechanism, where she has found herself, ways to cope with what is on ground.
Thank you very much, ma'am. This note, we would like to move to the panel session. This is the session that I am really excited about.
Okay, they should also, if there's a register, there should be a GBV register. If there's a register, they should actually. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. All right, you too. Thank you, sir. All right. Okay. Okay.
Kindly mute your microphone, please. Thank you very much. Now we would move to the panel discussions. Please everyone, please can you put on your cameras, please? Would like to take a photograph before we move into the panel discussion. Everyone, please smile and put on your cameras. Thank you, Mr. Aderonke. Can everyone follow suit, please?
Address council. Then also.
Thank you, Dr. Essio Boo. Thank you. Have you not? Thank you very much, everyone. Now we move to the panel discussion. The first agenda is the impact of climate change on women, how we can engage women in mitigating climate change to build a sustainable tomorrow. Nigerian women plays important role in food agriculture. It's reported that women, smallholder farmer, constitute 70 to 80% of agricultural labor. They produce the bulk of food for domestic consumption. Women are affected by climate change, such as the rising levels in heat, and also the encroachment of desert encroachment. And it has also been noted that the Lake Chad, which is in the northeast region, has shrunk by 90% since the 1960s. So this has invariably resulted in drought, loss of reduced access to water in the northeast area. But women in the southwest and southeast region are also affected by climate due to the rise in the sea levels and also increased precipitation, coastal erosion, and flooding. And this has also resulted in displacement of many settlements and farmlands. One of the leading causes of and greatest contributor to world hunger, malnutrition, exposure to disease, and declining access to water is climate change. It also poses limitations to adequate housing, spurring the loss of livelihoods as a result of permanent displacement. Climate change affects economic and social rights of women, and this includes their rights to food, health, and shelter. Climate change is a developmental problem, and the impact ripples across all the sustainable development goals, such as food security, girl-child education, and the likes. So I would like to ask Dr. Essio Boo, are you here, sir? Dr. Essio Boo. I would like to ask one of our panelists to please highlight the impact of climate change on food security. I don't know if Dr. Essio Boo is around. Okay. In his absence, I'd like to ask Ms. Aderonke if you can please highlight the impact of climate change on food security and the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women.
Okay, I can see that Dr. Essio Boo is back. I would like to hear from him. So
okay.
if you don't mind.
Okay, Dr. Essio Boo. Kindly unmute, please, Dr. Essio Boo. Hello, Dr. Essio Boo, are you there? Welcome back, sir. Dr. Essio Boo, please, I would like to direct this question to you, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay, while we wait for him so that we do not waste much of
Hello,
our time.
hello. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me
we can
now?
hear you. Thank you very much, sir. So I'd like to direct the question to you.
Activity, fetching firewood, all these things are part of the impact women face. Even the smoke they inhale from open fuel wood that they use Then again, in terms of agriculture, it also affects them because they are the one who produces the bulk of food. They go to farm, they do also household activity, and all these things are burden to them, coupled with the impact of climate change. And men are not really affected, just like women. And in International Women's Day, it's good as we begin to highlight some of the challenges women face in climate change, in mitigating climate change, adapting to climate change, and also in producing food for their family, as well as for the teeming population. So the impact is heavy for women. And now we have to think of how we can make this impact, or we can reduce this impact on women, on how to provide local measures or local adaptation practices
Okay, so we cannot hear you, sir. Okay, I believe Dr. Essio Boo is having network glitch. Ms. Aderonke, would you like to speak on this?
Okay, I would say that the impact of climate change on food security is very easy to highlight, because when you do not have, when you have increase in temperature, you'll definitely be the crop yield will be very, very low. So it will affect the crops negatively. And then if you have overflooding, and if you have flooding in your farmland, it will lead to crop loss of crop yield and all. So that would reduce the crop yield and access to food. So there will be shortage of food. And then this would also lead to starvation. So people do not have enough food to eat. And it will also lead to macroeconomic. So the economy would not be good. It will reduce the economy and the impacts
we cannot hear you,
on the
sir.
economy. Can I continue?
Yes, please continue, ma'am.
Okay, so and then also it will definitely reduce the production of meat, production of animal yield.
Hello, are you there? Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Hello.
We lost you for some time, sir. Miss Aderonke speaking at the moment, sir.
Okay, no problem. Let me wait till she finishes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so those are the points I think I would say for now, how climate change impacts on food security. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Dr. Essio Boo, we can have you now.
I think you're muted, Dr. Essio Boo.
Hello. Can you get me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, sir.
Okay. What I'm saying is women are heavily affected by impact of climate change because they produce bulk of the food we consume, as well as produce for their family too. It's really a very heavy task. The latest report by World Bank says women has big burden, and most of these households burden, coupled with impact of climate change, is really dealing with them. So now we should be talking about how to see how we can help build capacity of women to reduce the impact of this climate change and help them mitigate over time. Most of the women, particularly those in rural community, uses open smoke. And this open smoke is not even good for their health. Most of them have issues with respiratory sickness and the rest of them, coupled with going to fetch firewood. Most of these intra-household gender activity, they get this, they get that, they get this. So all these things coupled with the impact of climate change is really having a very heavy burden on them. They go to farm, they do this, they do a lot of activities to make sure their family are well fed, coupled with childbearing is also part of responsibility. And when they have impact of climate change is also exacerbating their condition. So now we should, in commemorating International Women's Day, we should be talking of how to see how we can help women adapt to climate change and mitigate over time, build their capacity, help them think of a local adaptation strategy that is prevalent with them or that is within their own capacity, not just incorporating big adaptation strategy. Because most of the reason why we discuss, one of the reasons why look as if women are not adapting to climate change is most of the adaptation strategies seems to be too much for them. That is not even most of the local conditions are not even does not adapt to most of the foreign or global adaptation strategy. Like a farmer, a woman who is into agricultural farming, like produces arable crop like maize, cassava, melon, and the rest of them. If you bring adaptation strategy that does not commemorate or that is not conditioned to that particular local area, she may not be able to adapt it, and she may be having challenges. Now, most of them do in terms of trying to monitor the rainy days as well as sunshine duration. Most of them do, it's either they plant early or they harvest late. A farmer who wants to, maybe I want to have my harvest of cassava in the next harvesting season, may decide, okay, since rain has not come now, why don't I wait? Why don't I do early planting and wait for the onset of the rain, so that when it comes, I can be able to harvest as real time. So all these things are really affecting women's capacity to even reach beyond their potentials. It's affecting them greatly. And if care is not taken, women might begin to affect the development of this country. Nelson Mandela says that any country that ignores the potentials of their women in all phases of economic endeavor, be it agriculture, education, health sector, sports and activity, and the rest, that country can never grow. And that is true. So in this International Women's Day, we must begin to highlight some of those challenges and how they can particularly help women, how we can build their capacity to help them mitigate and also adapt to climate change. And also, even in our local ways, we are also contributing to climate change, both for women and even women to contribute to climate change mostly. Because a woman who is a woman might be washing his teeth or brushing his teeth while also leaving the tap on. All these things are contributing to flooding, because you might be flooding somewhere while you are washing, while you are leaving your tap open. And this thing boils down to women too, because women do most of the household chores. They wash clothes, they bathe the child, they nurture the child, they do all household activity. And this thing also goes to using of even the water scarcity we are having is also part of it, because when you are leaving your tap open, you might be flooding somewhere. Tomorrow we begin to say, where did this flood come from? It's all some of those activities we are doing, all human activities also contributes to that. So I don't know if I can maybe pause at this point so I can give other persons time to talk.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your input.
Okay.
Miss Temi Uduapia.
Yes, hello.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Would you like to make an input on the impact of climate change on women's economic inclusion as well as girl-child education?
Okay, so I will focus on the economic aspects of things and maybe touch a little bit on the education aspect of things. Now I'm going to focus on not just climate change, but when climate disasters actually happen, and how a lot of the times is really minimized the significant impacts that it has on livelihoods and also the disruption in the education of the girl child. Usually, and from a lot of research and reports, you would see that when there's a climate disaster, men are usually almost 100% aware of some of the benefits that they can get from the government or any donors with regards to resettlements after that disaster. Also, men usually stay employed and are able to bring in economic resources because the majority of them are employed in the formal sector. When it comes to women, a lot of women are employed in the informal sector and usually don't have any source of income or any source of income to rely on after climate disasters. Even if you were supposed to focus on women working within the agricultural chain, women within those chains usually have no land rights and would have no access to land that they would benefit from to sustain those agricultural chains and agricultural processing. So yeah, it does have a significant impact. And of course, this is where climate adaptation, even though that's not my field, it plays a huge role in reducing the vulnerability and building the resilience of women and girls after climate disasters, even down to also rebuilding the governance structures and the legal structures to have women adapt better to those disasters. But then also climate mitigation plays a huge aspect, and I hope to discuss more on that further on in the panel discussions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kemi, for your input. We really appreciate you. We would like to move on to the second agenda, which is what can the government, civil society organizations, and development plans do to improve women's inclusion in addressing climate action? Civil society organizations increase accountability and transparency in the negotiation process through advocacy for climate justice, and they represent the marginalized and disadvantaged groups such as women and indigenous groups. The Federal Executive Council approved a comprehensive strategy policy on climate change. That's the Nigerian Climate Change Policy Response and Strategy, NCCPRS, which has an overarching objective to promote low carbon, high growth, economic development, and climate resilient society. In incorporating gender perspectives and involving women as agents of change in response to climate, I would like to ask what has been done in the public sphere to promote gender responsive climate action in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. Dr. Imara, Dr. Joyce Nchom, would you like to shed some light on this aspect, on this question, ma'am? What has been done in the public sphere to promote gender responsive climate action in the context of sustainable development in Nigeria? Okay, Dr. Essio Boo, would you like to shed some light on this question, sir? And what has been done in the public sphere to promote gender responsive climate action in the context of sustainable development in Nigeria? Hello. Dr. Essio Boo, are you there?
Maybe his network is not stable.
Dr. Joyce? Hello, ma'am.
It has been done in the public sphere. Response. Mrs. Joyce, Mrs. Esther. I wish we had someone from the government. You know, perhaps they could have, I mean, okay, government, when I say government, I mean from the Ministry of Environment, particularly the climate change units. They have a climate change unit, they have a pollution unit, and that's where you have the ozone piece. But from my little knowledge, from what I've read, I think that when you say the public, I would want to refer to the government as the public. And one thing I know that they've been able to do is I think they have continued to increase, you know, the participation of women in projects, you know, that pertains to climate change. And I think that's the first step to engage, you know, more women in the projects that pertains to climate change. And because it's very important that they have access to project and program resources. So with that, they can hone their skill in that area and be able to produce or to bring about a change, you know, in climate related matters.
Thank you very much, ma'am. This note would move to the third agenda, which is gender inequalities and how we can advance gender equality in the context of climate crisis and disaster risk reduction, as women are the most vulnerable and marginalized. Women are not only vulnerable to climate change, but they are also effective actors or agents of change in relation to both mitigation and adaptation. Women have a strong body of knowledge and expertise that can be used in climate change mitigation, disaster reduction, and adaptation. Nigeria is Africa's biggest oil producer, and this oil provides the vast majority of Nigeria's export revenues. The sector is also responsible for much of the country's emission, with renewable energy being a key climate change mitigation technology. I'd like to ask, what is the future of renewable energy in Nigeria? Ms. Temi, would you like to make an input regards to this?
Yes, yeah, I can make an input into this. So I'd like to also emphasize the point that, you know, when we talk about climate mitigation, we're talking about more than just renewable energy. We're talking about energy efficiency, that is minimizing the use of energy. And then we're talking about energy access through changing to clean cooking mechanisms. So all these three things work hand in hand, and they have their significant impacts to play when it comes to climate mitigation. But in terms of renewable energy, there is a huge potential for renewable energy in Nigeria. There's already a very developed policy framework and regulatory framework, especially when we're talking about solar technologies. So over the past decade, the government in Nigeria has been working on developing these policies. So when I say the government, I mean the electricity regulator, the Ministry of Power, the Rural Electrification Agency, and then in some ways also partnering with the Ministry of Environment to be able to simplify some of the processes in carrying out these renewable energy projects. So there's been over the past decade a lot of support in terms of developing policies and regulations. And the main aim of this is to allow private sector who has the financing and also donors who also have the financing to develop pipelines of renewable energy projects.
That's why the mentorship program is on. So there'll be opportunities. And then, when the opportunities come up, they won't want to bring anyone from the blues. It is people that have been working there.
Hello, sir.
Really step up.
Hello.
Then,
Hello, sir. Please mute your microphone.
Hello.
All these things, when you know them, it gives you an edge.
Hello.
Dr. Essio Boo.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. Welcome back, sir. Ms. Temi, kindly continue, please.
All right, thank you. So when we talk about renewable energy, I'm going to divide it into two aspects. So there's provision of electricity through renewables in rural areas or peri-urban rural communities, some of these places where they've never had access to power, and some of them where their only access to power for like agricultural processes or production has relied on diesel generators. When it comes to that, there's been a lot of activity in that space. GIZ, which is the German Development Corporation, has supported in piloting a lot of the technologies like mini grids, like solar home systems, to then allow other donors and the government and the private sector to commit funding to projects. So the good news is that currently World Bank and the African Development Bank have committed $350 million specifically to rural electrification. And then recently in 2020, the Central Bank of Nigeria also has committed $2 billion towards rural electrification projects. When we talk about on-grid projects or grid projects, which I know is what affects most Nigerians. Currently, I know that the light situation is really bad on the grid during this heat season. So it's already proof that that area is advancing a bit more slowly. However, the distribution companies and the utilities, they are beginning to kind of adapt their business models to allow renewable energy to come into the grid. In addition, the federal government, that's the Ministry of Power and the Office of the Vice President, they've launched data management and electrification plans. So those allow people to take data-based decisions on where renewable energy should come in on the grid, and also help to identify those communities that don't yet have access to electricity. So in terms of that, the World Bank has $150 million loan to the Nigerian government to allow for refurbishing the grid network, because renewable energy, I don't want to go into the engineering, but the current state of the grid network does not allow for easy feeding of renewable energy into the grid. So that $750 million is to help to refurbish the grid network and the transmission system. And Nigeria has also partnered with Siemens on the Nigerian electrification roadmap over the next 6 years. And the whole idea of that is to be able to allow for 25 gigawatts with a mix of renewable energy to be generated. So in conclusion, yes, the sector is definitely growing, and we should expect to see a lot more projects coming upstream. As I said, a lot of focus has been on creating that policy and regulatory framework to allow for easy investments. So we're going to be seeing a lot more projects coming upstream, both for on-grid and for rural electrification.
Thank you very much, Ms. Temi, for that insight. We really appreciate your input. Dr. Essio Boo, are you available, sir? Are you on the call, sir?
Hello, I'm still here.
Although
All right, I'd like to direct this question.
It's also something that we should be looking
Okay.
at.
Women are the most vulnerable and marginalized. How can we bolster gender equality in the context of climate crisis and disaster risk reduction in Nigeria?
So
okay. Yes, women are the most vulnerable persons when it comes to climate change impacts. How do we boost their gender equality in context of climate crisis? One is to incorporate women into climate change. Incorporate women into climate change impact driven projects. Women should be able to lead those impact driven projects, particularly those related to agriculture, as the ones related to agriculture. The impact of climate change might not actually reduce entirely because there are a lot of factors that we cannot control. There are a lot of factors that we cannot control. In terms of agricultural production, there are something like crops, like important food security crops like rice and cassava. They are most of the crops that have been targeted in reducing food insecurity, and women should be able to lead this particular area of crop. World Bank, the federal government, the donor agencies, stakeholders should incorporate women when developing agricultural technologies targeted at increasing rice production as well as cassava production. Report by FAO says women are the greatest part of people or persons that produces more of cassava and also even rice too, because these two crops are most important food security crop. But in terms of rice, rice is being affected by greenhouse gas emission. Rice field is highly vulnerable to greenhouse gas, so it is very difficult to control that. But the only way is to develop adaptation strategies that women, societal women, can be able to incorporate in their production. Adaptation strategies like mixed cropping, early planting, early harvesting, use of zero tillage or zero planting, so there won't be so much impact. And also in this crisis, women should also be supported financially in any of their endeavor, be it entrepreneurship, agripreneurship, education, because they are most vulnerable. Why they are also vulnerable, they are also the major contributing, the part of the major contributing factor because of some of their activities. They have to be supported financially. They also have to be supported in building their capacity, so that they can be able to adapt to climate change. So the bottom line is this: women should be supported financially. Women potential should also be built in terms of mitigating climate change. Funds should also be budgeted for women at all phases of life or at all endeavor, be it education, agriculture, and the rest, so they can help them adapt to climate change adequately. Because we believe that if women are able to adapt to climate change, men will also be able to adapt to climate change, because most of men or most of developmental effort targeted at women produce higher results than that of men. To believe them more than their fellow men, because women seems to be more sincere, they seems to be more honest and rigor in taking any climate change action. That is my submission for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Essio Boo, for your input.
Other ones are community refuse. So who is in charge of
spotlighting the contributions of women and young girls in achieving climate justice in Nigeria. Climate justice, according to experts, is the fair treatment of all people and the freedom from discrimination in the creation of policies and projects that address climate change, as well as systems that create climate change and perpetuate discrimination. In Nigeria, many women and women-led organizations are in the forefront of the fight for climate action. Some of their contributions include the improvement of women's knowledge in agroecology, agroforestry, and renewable energies through different training programs for adopting and sustaining agriculture, use of renewable energy, and efficient cooking stoves. Some women and the contributions that they have made. Chief Mrs. Nana Akuribido is a leader in the space of renewable energy and green economy in Nigeria. She is the national president of the Renewable Energy Association, and this is one of the offices that she holds. She founded the Smiling Simon Greenbuild Foundation, which has various benefits for women, including acquiring skills to become a green technology technician, a green entrepreneur, and a green ambassador, and also access to green energy loans and green grants to reduce energy poverty in Nigeria and to enable the girl child in science and technology related field to achieve the sustainable development goals in Nigeria. Another notable contribution from Mrs. Adekpeju Adebajo. She leads an innovation-driven team with a commitment to provide solar-powered solutions to 1 million Nigerian households and small businesses by 2025. She is an advisory board member of Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria and is active in gender-based organizations to increase female participation in public and private sector. The young Aderonke Oladosu is a climate activist and initiator of the school strike for climate in Nigeria. She has showcased her climate action at international conferences, including the United Nations Climate Change Conference, World Economic Forum, and Elevate Fiesta in Graz, Austria. In 2019 December, she attended the COP25 gathering in Spain as a Nigerian youth delegate, where she gave a moving address about climate change in Africa and how it affects lives. She was selected for the first United Nations Youth Climate Summit in New York, and she has been recognized by UNICEF Nigeria as a young change maker, as she leads a grassroots movement called I Lead Climate, which advocates for the restoration of Lake Chad and youth involvement in climate justice through education. She has been recognized by the Human Impact Institute, United States of America, as one of the 12 women taking climate action in rural communities. Mrs. Agbarakwe Esther is a climate change activist notable for winning the Live Africa 7th Annual Youth Leadership Awards in 2010. She co-founded the Nigerian Youth Climate Coalition, which is the biggest youth climate movement in Nigeria. She has also served as the youngest chairperson for the General Assembly and Action Aid Nigeria. She has served as an international advocacy fellow at Population Action International. These are some of the women, just a few of the women who have been in the forefront of fighting for climate change in Nigeria. Now, this brings us to the next question. What more can be done when talking about the contribution of women to climate justice to achieve the sustainable development goals in Nigeria? Ms. Temi, would you like to make an input?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm going to focus on this in terms of the roles that women play, especially in the renewable energy sector and in policy making. And then I'm going in line with this year's theme, which is break the bias, and really how that is really true for the renewable energy sector. So there's a study by the Global Gender Office of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and it shows that in the renewable energy sector, only 33% of the frameworks and policies globally include gender considerations. When it comes to out of those 33%, only 17% identify that women are beneficiaries of renewable energy frameworks. Out of that, the saddest thing is that only 1% identify women as agents of change. This also reflects in the employment rates in the sector. Women only represent 30% of the workforce and have only 17% representation in leadership roles. So women are disproportionately affected by climate change, yet we have limited considerations when it comes to the policies that are being implemented and even the roles that drive implementation towards climate action. So we definitely need an update in general in both how policies are designed and also the inclusion of women within these roles, and not just in administrative roles, but in technical roles, cutting across. And when I say technical, people generally think is engineering or STEM, but technical roles can be legal, it can be financial, it can be transaction advisory, it can really be anything. And then this comes down to what we do at the Women in Renewable Energy, where I am volunteering as the special events manager. So at the Women in Renewable Energy, or WIRE for short, we're a global nonprofit, and we support climate action by promoting the role and recognition of women within the energy sector. And so we do this through our programming, which is offered at all levels. It's offered to students, to those considering coming into the sector, to professionals, and to leaders within the sector. And the programming includes being able to do speed mentoring and being able to build capacity and also subject matter expertise through workshops and webinars, and being able to raise awareness on renewable energy careers and roles and policies, which I also hope that this session has also done to the audience, organizing field trips, and then knowledge sharing, and then also sharing industry updates like jobs, internships, and volunteer positions. And so boiling down to, even though we are a global organization, we try to understand the needs of the women within the specific energy sectors. So for example, in an African chapter, and understanding the needs, the regional and sub-regional and country needs of women and also men on the ground working within the energy sector, to make what we do as impactful as possible. Yeah, so in a nutshell, I think like there are many ways of like contributing to women and women participating or improving climate justice for women. But this is one of the ways that I think we can go about it, in increasing the role of women as being embedded in these policies and having a seat at the table basically, and being in these roles where climate action is being implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Simi, for your input. That was quite insightful. On to the next question. Dr. Essio Boo, are you available, sir? Okay. Without the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 13, which is the climate action, can we truly achieve the other United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Mrs. Aderonke, would you be able to shed more light on this? Without the achievement of the SDG 13, can we truly achieve the other United Nations Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, I would say that every other thing borders around climate action, climate change. Climate change climate change have effects on women, have effect on our health, has effect on the environment, on agriculture, on accessibility to good facility, accessibility to education, to good roads and all. So I would say, in my opinion, that everything borders around it. You have to keep the climate safe for you to be able to do any other thing. So if you do not have an environment that is conducive for you to to do whatever you want to do, then it may not be possible for you to do. So it's very crucial and that's why the talk has bordered around climate change now. So it's very key. It's key to achieving other SDGs. And like I highlighted in my presentation, that gender issues that borders around climate change and sustainable development goals are interwoven. About 6 or 7 have women and children, in them. So as much as that is, we also realize from here also that climate change, climate action is a very fundamental action or matter of the heart, if I may put it that way. So you need all of the other SDGs would have to be interwoven inside of the climate action. So I would say yes, that without the achievement of SDG 13, we may not truly be able to achieve the other UN Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insightful input. On this note, we would like to move to the call for action. This summit is a call for both citizens and government involvement in mitigating the climate action. We call on all actors, citizens and government to embrace and bolster sustainable environmental and agricultural practices in mitigating climate change impact in Nigeria. Also, we call for investment in sustainable and renewable energy, as there is a need for investment in this sector to be able to promote the use of clean and affordable energy, so that we can attain the zero emission target by the year 2060. We also call for the adoption and building resilience to climate change. Building resilience to climate change involves all actors having the capacity to anticipate climate risk and hazards, to absorb shocks and stresses and reshape and transform development pathways in longer term. We are calling for the ways by which we can adopt and build resilience to climate is to carry out awareness and advocacy, to carry out climate risk assessments at national, local, sectoral, or organizational levels, to develop and implement appropriate actions and interventions, to mobilize resources, to monitor and track progress, and to share knowledge and experiences as well as solutions. We also call for gender responsive policies and strategies. Finally, we call for the promotion of agroecology for climate resilience. Agroecological practices represent the most effective way to achieve sustainable food security and nutrition for all in a changing climate, particularly in a developing country like Nigeria. There is a need for a transition to green energy. However, will women benefit from this opportunity? Yes, is the answer, provided countries adopt strong policies and programs that make it happen. Therefore, there is a need for women-led actions to be sufficiently and equitably funded in order to achieve a just and green transition. According to Adrian Kilbafi, the senior gender advisor to the UNDP, climate crisis disproportionately affects women and girls, further exacerbates threats and peace and security. And this leads to loss of a livelihood and increases migration and displacement. On this note, we must not forget that gender equality is essential for us to be able to mitigate climate change.
Wow, wow, wow.
And finally, climate change policies should not be neglected. The importance of gender equality and women empowerment is acknowledged as a prerequisite for sustainable development. On this note, the African Girls Empowerment Network would like to appreciate the speakers, the panelists, and the participants of the International Women's Day Summit 2022. Thank you very much. We appreciate your presence.
Thank you, Ms. Esther. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the AIDS Network for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir H Network. They did a great job.
Please, if anyone has any question for the African Girls Empowerment Network, kindly put it in the chat box and we would reply promptly. Thank you very much. Happy International Women's Day. Have a great day. In the absence of no question, would like to call it a day. Thank you very much. We thank all the speakers and the panelists for your time. Thank you very much.